after yesterday's meeting. I'm really happy to see you here again. Well, we've got a busy agenda this afternoon. We have 3 presentations, and I just say, well, let's get started right now. First, I want to introduce to you Lorraine Sutherland. She is head of the reporting office of the House of Commons in the United Kingdom, and she has a very interesting presentation, and the floor is yours, Lorraine.
Thank you very much, Lorraine, for that introduction. And as you may have noticed, I'm not entirely alone here. Excuse me?
I think it's on, but perhaps my voice is... Yes, I think...
My microphone technique is obviously not as good. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Jonathan Hoare, who's my designated driver of the presentation today, and who will also be talking about some of the content of our postgraduate course later on. So, as you see, the title of the presentation, From Black Art to Black Gown. Why did I call it Black Art in the beginning? Well, I don't know whether you had the same experience as I did, but 32 years ago, when I started as a parliamentary reporter, the method by which we learned was being attached to an experienced reporter, and there you learn from them. I was given 2 weeks in which to somehow divine every single thing that this person knew, to learn all of the rules that we had, and to get the job right. We call that sitting with Nelly. I don't know whether you have a similar expression in your legislatures or where you work. And it was a black art because it wasn't written down anywhere. There were no written rules. It was all word of mouth, and you just knew when you were going to when something was right or something was wrong. We had some really strange rules at the time. For example, there were some sub-editors who would never allow you to use the word particular or particularly. We always had to use the word especially instead. We were never allowed to start a sentence with the word this. And there were about 20 or 30 similar examples of things that we dared not do without incurring the wrath of the sub-editors. We also had, when I first started in the House of Commons, we had a Pitman's shorthand school. We started our own school. I think some of you probably know or have heard of Peter Walker, who was the deputy editor in the House of Commons. And Peter was very keen on shorthand, but at the time it was very difficult to find well-qualified shorthand writers who could write fast enough for our purposes. So we started our own school. That eventually changed into a stenograph school. So we got ourselves a stenograph teacher instead, because Peter's view and the view of our editor at the time was that CAT, computer-aided transcription, was going to be our saviour. We were going to be able to cut the number of reporters in our reporting rota by about half, and everyone would use CAT in order to produce their work. Now, unfortunately, it didn't work out like that. We turned out some fantastic reporters, but not all of them were really good CAT reporters. So CAT wasn't our saviour after all. And then about 15 years ago, we came to the decision that actually it didn't matter how you captured the words. What really mattered was what you did with them afterwards. So English language skills became the most important attribute that we were looking for in our recruits. And therefore we decided to drop shorthand. I was personally sad about that because I was a Pitman's reporter Pitman's shorthand reporter from the very beginning. But from 1997 onwards, we have audio-only reporting training. The main purpose of my talk today is to tell you about our postgraduate diploma, which is validated by an external learning organization. Why did we want to seek validation of our already very good and well-established training program? Well, one of the reasons was that about 7 years ago, there was a big restructuring exercise of the administration in the House of Commons. And one of the results was that the Hansard department, the official report department, became merged into a bigger department, including the clerks and some of our security functions. So we had, if you like, merger blues. And we wanted very much to ensure that we retained our unique identity and the quality of our product. So we talked quite a lot about how we would best do that, and one of the sub-editors at the time came up with the idea of externally validating our reporter training course. So as I said, it was an already very successful scheme. We probably had an intake of 5, 6, 7 people every 18 months or so, and we produced really good quality reporters out of that. We wanted not just to codify the course, but we wanted to put it to potential further use. Some examples of that could be shorter, more tailored courses for people from outside. We're also thinking about codifying our editorial training as well, and possibly introducing some sort of a postgraduate diploma for editorial training as well as for reporter training. You're a bit slow. One of the other interesting things we're doing is thinking about training some of our colleagues around Parliament. We in the official report are the experts in English language skills, and we quite often see publications, documents, leaflets produced by our colleagues from other departments which have mistakes in them. They occasionally ask us to proofread for them, and we do that willingly. But what we would quite like to be able to do is to offer them some sort of training as well in English language skills, so that they don't make the mistakes in the first place. So at the moment we're busy creating courses for them as well. So we have to set about finding a partner for this validation. The sub-editor whose idea it was volunteered to go out and look for the best possible fit. And he looked at various universities around London, and eventually he came up with the idea of City University. And this was back in 2008 that we first identified City University as a partner. We chose City University not because it has a good school of journalism. We definitely did not want to be associated with journalism, because the official report is definitely not a newspaper report. But they also had a really good focus on business and the professions. And in the end, we actually became affiliated with their law school. That appeared to have the best fit for us. There was a lot of preparatory work that went on into getting this validation. We had to, first of all, produce a submission document, which was over 20 pages long and had to be revised many times in conjunction with them. We had to devise assessment methods. Even though our established course had some assessment methods, they weren't the same as academic assessment methods. So we had to revise those, and we had to write them down. We had to describe all of the various grades that we were going to attribute to people's marks. We had to distinguish between the various levels of attainment. It took us 18 months to agree the course content with them. So by April 2010, we had managed to agree the course content. We did hope that we would be able to apply the new validated training program to our May 2010 training group, but unfortunately we just weren't able to get all of the documentation in place in time for that. There were many reasons for it. The dean of the school, who was one of our biggest champions, fell ill, and he was away for some months, so we lost the contact with him. We made, I think, a basic mistake in that we left that single sub-editor to do too much by himself, and then we decided, in order to make some progress, we would form a committee so that he wasn't doing all of the work by himself. So this involved us in rewriting the submission document yet again, listening to what the university wanted. Sometimes they surprised us by asking for example, formal terms of reference. They asked us to find an external examiner as well. There were all sorts of things, all sorts of hoops that we had to jump through before we were able to get permission from them. And eventually, the eureka moment, when things finally fell into place, was when we had a meeting with the validation committee from City University at the House of Commons in April last year. During that meeting, some of the former students, that's the class of 2010, for example, spoke to the validation committee about their learning experiences. And it was their testimony, if you like, which convinced the validation committee that A, we were serious about what we were doing, B, that we knew what we were doing, and C, that we would be good partners for them. We still had to have some more discussions about the assessment criteria, but finally they agreed, and we were able to start another course with the class of 2012. It's the 4 people on the right of the picture. The 2 people on the left were the class tutors. So Jonathan here is going to describe a little bit about the course content, and then if we have time at the end, we'd be very glad to take some questions from you.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll be able to get the timing of the bullet points and what I'm going to say a little bit more precise from now on. So, as Lorraine was saying, there was a lot of work that led up to the first of these validated Hansard training courses. This is actually just a little photo of the training room in which the course took place with 2 of the students. There are really 3 main aspects to the process of finding our new Hansard reporters. The first one, obviously, is the recruitment. There are 3 legs to that recruitment. The first one, obviously, is we have a detailed person specification in the advertisement that goes out in the newspaper, and also a written test that all candidates have to complete. The second part is a transcription test in Parliament. So the people who are successful after that first round will come into Parliament and actually do a test of their transcribing ability to a time limit. And the third part would be that those people who are successful in the transcription test will do a formal interview. So the person specification. The first part of that is we need people to have a wide general knowledge and the ability to understand a complex argument and report it clearly and grammatically. This is the intellectual capital, if you like, which I think was a term that people were using yesterday. We need people to have language skills, but we also need them to have the knowledge of current affairs, of politics, both nationally and internationally, in order to interpret what they are transcribing. Because we also require people to have the ability to edit the reports of Parliament. The other aspect that the specification looked for was the ability to check references, and this is sort of general research skills, quotations, and other details, because we need these to be absolutely accurate in our official report. And the third aspect would be that they have team working skills. We want to have team players working for us, because when we're working in the deadline-driven environment we have, that's very important. So they need to be able to work quickly and flexibly. And also to have good keyboard skills, which I'm sure you're all very happy to hear about, and familiarity with Windows-based software, which our bespoke software is based on. The next aspect of the recruitment, as I said, was the written test. So once they had applied, put their CV in, we have a written test which tests their current affairs knowledge and their language skills. I've just got a very small example of what appeared in the last written test. In this sentence, they had to spot the mistakes. I'm sure all of you can spot a couple of obvious errors there straight away. Jacob Zuma, South Africa, and week is spelt wrong. There may be some other mistakes there as well, who knows. The transcription test then followed that written test that people sent in with the application. So we weeded out a lot of the people who didn't have some of the basic skills we required, and then invited them into Parliament to do a transcription test. As I said, it was conducted in Parliament. We had originally 800 applicants for 4 jobs. We whittled that down through the written test that I just referred to 60 people. 60 people came into Parliament to do the transcription test to a time limit. They had 75 minutes to transcribe a 5-minute speech. And it was marked by several of the sub-editors, including myself, on the day. And we used that test then to decide who we wanted to invite for the interview. So the interview process, we had a 30-minute interview, testing various, it could be current affairs knowledge, but we could be testing team working ability and so on. There were 12 people that we interviewed, and the panel consisted of Hansard's training manager, one of the people who actually took the validated course, one of the trainers on the course, and then a representative from Human Resources in Parliament. As a result, 4 candidates were appointed. So that was the end of quite a long recruitment process. We actually had 4 people whose photographs you've just seen. Just a little bit now about the structure of the course. There were 2 modules. Previously, as Lorraine was alluded to, we always had a very thorough training course, which I went through, which many of my colleagues, well, all of my colleagues have gone through. That was a 3-month training course, and then if people were successful on the training course, they would start the job. In this new validated course, we broke it up into 2 modules. The first module was the 3-month training course in the classroom, which followed the general experience that we've had in the past, but with a more systematic and accredited form. And then the second module, which I'll talk about in a moment, was actually after that first 3 months of training, the trainees were embedded in teams, so they started to work live, but with close supervision by the trainers and their line managers. So in that first module, it was a 12-week course, as I was saying, 3 months, full-time. They were working in the classroom, so they were testing their transcription skills, working to time limits, but they were also frequently visiting live events, by which we mean they would go into the House of Commons chamber, they would visit committees, so they would be not just reporting what we used to call dead tapes, not just old debates from Parliament, but things they'd actually witnessed themselves. They'd been there, so they had an experience of what it would be like to do the job for real. And we used various methods during this course. Group instruction using recordings of debates, practicing transcribing. There was a lot of one-to-one coaching. That was part of what City University asked for. Shadowing, so they would go and shadow reporters who were actually doing the job for real as part of their training experience. Observing live proceedings, as I said. Independent study, that was something new in the accredited course, because they needed to produce an independent research project as part of getting the diploma. Knowledge reviews, copy analysis, by which we meant They would analyse within the group the issues of editing a particular text, what the pitfalls might have been, what issues need to be considered when editing. Hansard expert presentations, so people